The affirmation is supposed to take root in every area of your life. But if we don't know what that looks like, how can we do that?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Apprentice podcast. Woo! My name is Brittany, and I am your host. And so I want to introduce this brand new episode 3, and we have our special guest is Erin and Elise Enyinda. If you haven't heard of Erin, Elise Enyinda, you are missing out. I want to tell you that right now because she is a podcaster, she is a journalist, she's a photographer, she's a public speaker, and most of all, she is the founder of Live Affirmed magazine. So that's so exciting. Now, if you haven't heard of Live Affirmed magazine, it's a magazine all about amplifying, empowering, and inspiring women everywhere. So if you haven't gotten a copy yet, go ahead and get that right now at liveaffirmed.com. Now, in this episode, Anne shares advice about where it took to go from the woman she was to the woman that she is right now. And she shares tips on how to affirm yourself both now and in the future. So I'm so excited for y'all to hear her episode. She's so inspiring, and we'll take it away. Oh, and one more thing. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Apprentice_pod. Or if you want some updates about all things Apprentice Podcast, go ahead and go on our Instagram, Apprentice_pod. Or, and most of all, if you want to listen to our episodes in full, go ahead, not only on YouTube, but we also have our Spotify at The Apprentice Podcast or Apple Podcasts, if that's what you prefer, at also The Apprentice Podcast. All right, well, awesome. Hope you enjoyed the episode.
Well, I'm happy to have you on the podcast. I was really interested, in your story because it seems like you're doing a whole lot, and I think I saw a little bit on your website that you infused a lot of your passions into one, and now you're absolutely thriving. So I wanted to hear more of your story. So we'll start off with our first question. I just want to know, tell us about who you are and what your passion is. What do you do?
Yes. Who I am is, I guess to me that feels very, very broad just because I have so many interests. But ultimately, at my core, I'm a creator. I am a creative individual. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. I'm an advocate for women. I really want women to find their voice, to celebrate who they are authentically. No additives, no preservatives needed. And I'm just a lover of people and life and God. Honestly, if I was to sum myself up, it would really just be that. The things that I'm interested in, they have all infused together, but there was a time period, a very long time period where they did not. And it definitely felt like, my life didn't make sense, or all the different things that I like to do were all kind of compartmentalized. Yeah. And so it's this makes sense by itself, but together, does it still make sense? And there were a lot of moments where I felt like it didn't, but now at this present time, yes, it does.
Oh, wow. Can you walk us a little bit through that part of your life when everything was kind of compartmentalized, as you say, trying to figure out, okay, how do these two things go together and going from there?
Yeah, totally. So I feel like I have, and just like everybody else, have had seasons of my life where I focused on just one thing, or maybe it was two things at a time. So for example, there were seasons of my life where I was just writing. Then I got into spoken word poetry. Then spoken word poetry evolved into podcasting. Then podcasting evolved into public speaking.
It's a building.
Then public speaking evolved along at the same time with photography. Then I went hand in hand with those two. And then I became a photojournalist. And then from photojournalism, I still held on to podcasting, my public speaking, and then now you have everything meshed together with the magazine that I have called Live Affirmed.
Yes, Live Affirmed. Yes. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. My another question was, you talked about in your life about what was that part of your life like when you were kind of figuring out how do all these passions of mine add up, and you were just kind of not sure?
Yeah, to me, it's a really deep question because I know the internal work that I had to do for that. And I also believe life is seasonal. So for some seasons, I was working in retail while doing my podcast and photography. There were other seasons where I was a student. Some seasons where I was doing the public speaking. And so everything had its season. Yeah. But in its season, when I was focused on it, I was developing that craft. I was like fine tuning that area. And so I'm ADHD. Like not like, you know how some people are like, oh, I'm ADHD. No, I actually am ADHD.
The real deal here,
Unfortunately. But it has become my superpower. I've learned how to utilize it for my benefit. And so with ADHD, you are essentially hyper focused on something, right? So I would be hyper focused on podcasting, on public speaking, on photography. And then it was like everything came together to create this, you know, what I believe, you know, a mega force or a really cool fusion of everything, which is now my magazine. Again, Live Affirmed.
Live Affirmed, yes, period. I put that on in there.
Just in case you missed it the first time.
Exactly.
But, yeah, so I just believe that there are seasons, right? And in some seasons, it's like, well, I know I like to do this thing and I know I'm good at this thing. I don't know how it's going to work together. Literally, I just didn't. But I did a lot of soul searching and I also did a lot of praying. And there were a lot of moments where I was just like, God, I don't know how to bring this all together. I just know that you can. And you've showed me that you would. So I'm just going to go through the process. And really what I feel like the ultimate answer to that question is, if I could sum it up in one word, it's literally process. It is literally process.
Ooh, yeah, so. everybody's gonna like it. Everybody's like, oh,
where your eyebrows singed.
Yeah, please, no, for real. But that just speaks to me. I know for me, I'm in this journey with even like with it being season 2 of like the podcast. I'm like, okay, Lord, like where's this going? Or do you want me to continue with this, or how does this look? And it's really hard not knowing. I think
it is hard.
But I love that you said just focusing on the process and everything, focusing one day at a time, because I'm really trying. But that encourages me, just knowing that you were at that point and now you're here. So it's awesome. It's really cool, inspiring, actually.
And I'm still on my way. I'm still on my journey. Let's be very clear about that.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, when we talk about this, right, there's a very sensitive side to that, because people want to feel like they make sense. When your day job is completely contradictory to your passion or to what you feel like you actually excel in, that could be very frustrating, right? So it's almost like you are living in this way where you have to function in one way to survive, but what your heart wants to do is something else, and you're waiting for that moment to be able to do it. So there's a vulnerability there, right? Because you have a desire and it hasn't fully like manifested yet. The second aspect of that could be potentially like how people view you, right? So I remember in some seasons, because, you know, and let's just be honest, like creative, sometimes we have like, we have the flighty kind of reputation where it's like, oh, what are you into now? Please, what is it this time? You know, please let us know. It was t-shirts last month. What is it this one? You know?
Call me out. Right. Get my journal.
Right. You know, and so it's like, I never forget this, and I don't say this when I bring this up. I don't bring it up as a dig to this individual, but I remember a time where a friend was like, I know this version of Erin, I know this version of Erin. Now I see this version of Erin. What will it be next time? And I was like, wow. Fall back a little bit.
The truth really comes out.
Yes. But what it showed me, at that time it was offensive. But now, like 12 or 13 years later, I'm like, okay, but every version of me I needed that version, right? It took me to where I needed to be who I am now. So every version of me was necessary. So while you might have meant it as a dig, or maybe they didn't, you know, maybe it was honestly just observation, and I can understand that. But in hindsight, I'm like, you're right. But it was all necessary. So,
period.
You know?
Oh wow! I love that. I love that viewpoint of that too. You don't even think about it as a different version of yourself adding to who you are now. I love that. That's awesome.
Well, it's also hindsight, right? So like in the moment, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person said this to me. Like, but it could. I do think it could have just been an observation. You know, I think some people are just a little more like straightforward with how they talk about things, and so as I was close to that person at that point in time when she said it to me, I was just like, dang. But like I said, in hindsight, I'm like, you're right though.
Yeah.
And also, it took all that to get here.
Exactly.
And so now I'm proud. But when it wasn't making sense, it didn't feel good to have someone say that. And I think that was just the main thing, was like, dang, that doesn't feel good, and I haven't figured it out. And it's embarrassing for you to see that, and maybe you're also saying that with what you're saying to me.
Exactly.
But now it's like, yeah, you're right though.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool. It's like maybe now, because our moment was so stark, now you can look back and be like, now I know how to see that situation.
Exactly.
Now. Oh,
Exactly.
I love it. I love it.
Yes.
But yes, I'm gonna need you to tell us about this Live Affirmed magazine. Like, how did it start?
Yes.
What was the origin of Live Affirmed?
So, okay, Live Affirmed actually started as a podcast. So I used to do morning affirmations, and they were daily affirmations. So I had a Facebook show, and I would wake up every day and we would do affirmations, and they were faith-based. And so it was a season of my life where I was like really healing and just finding a way to articulate how to speak to my mind, speak to my body, speak to, my spirit, to encourage myself. And other people happened to like it. And so I had been teaching it for some time. And so I had the idea, okay, let me do a affirmation-based podcast. And so after a while, I was just like, okay, I'm doing the podcast. The funny thing about it was the podcast had been recorded, but it had not been released.
Oh.
So because I was waiting for something else. I didn't know what I was supposed to be waiting on. And so finally, once I dropped the podcast, God gave me the vision for the magazine.
Wow.
And so it's like, this is the key component. This is the missing component, the second part of what the podcast offers. So the podcast offers like the emotional aspect, the spiritual aspect. The magazine is like the everyday life part of that. Business, wellness, relationships, fashion, things like that. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's so cool how this come together like that. And that's awesome that like you had to like, how long was the podcast like not put out to the world before you
So
probably
embarrassing.
pulled the trigger? Yeah.
Like almost 2 years.
2 years?
And so I had a break, right, where I was still working on an old podcast, and I was kind of like waiting for the new thing, and it was just like, the affirmation podcast. I've told you already to do the affirmation podcast. I'm like, yeah, but wait, like I've already done this before. Like we've done affirmations for a long time. So like, what is the next thing? But when I started the podcast, that's when the next thing came to me. So
hey,
we can technically say Live Affirmed might have come out a few years earlier had I actually done the podcast sooner.
Oh wow! Hey, it's
Yes.
obedience, but hey, at least you're obedient and everything. And now look, it's awesome.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
I want to know, like, where did your love for women and motivating women, like, and just affirming women start?
You've asked a question that
Let me sit up.
it may get us down a wormhole. I hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
So, my upbringing and my life from childhood to probably, I mean, you could even say like my late 20s, mid 20s. It was a lot of trauma, it was a lot of traumatic things that happened. And I was a very introverted child. And so I kind of approached the world through a sense of like, what do I do to survive, right? Because there was a lot of abuse going on in my childhood, sexual abuse. And then my very first relationship was actually physically abusive. So my love for women and wanting them to be solid in who they are and wanting them to show up just authentically and empowered, it comes from me living from a space for so long of not being empowered and knowing what it feels like, knowing what it feels like to be looking for affirmation outside of yourself and understanding the path that a lot of people take when you don't have that affirmation that you need, and how to create it for yourself, right? With relationship with God and just like healing. But that's where it comes from.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, I know we got deep, but you asked. So.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess when did you first realize that, okay, I want to be able to share my story so that I can like positively affect others, like you said, show them how to create those affirmations for themselves. Like, what made you say, okay, now I need to share my story instead of just saying like, I'm just tell them and like hope they like take it, you know?
Yeah,
What made
yeah.
you say like, hey, I think I need to share something deeper?
Yeah. Okay. So this is like a twofold answer, right?
Oh, yeah?
The first part is, as a little girl, remember I told you my childhood was like pretty traumatic, right? But I used to go to the library with my grandmother and I used to rent books on tape. I'm dating
Oh, wow,
myself.
yeah.
I'm dating myself,
Tape.
but like
You're
books
good.
on tape, right? And so it would be like books by like Toni Morrison, Iyanla Van Zant, Maya Angelou, and I would listen to these women and I would be like, someday I'm gonna like share like what happened to me, right?
Yeah.
The next part of that answer is fast forward like 15 years. And I was the president of the Black Student Alliance at my community college.
Oh, yeah.
And I was feeling more empowered, right? Because it was something that school was going very well for me. And remember, I had ADHD.
Oh, yeah.
And so certain things were kind of like a struggle. So in that season of my life, I started doing spoken word poetry. I was like writing it. And then
Yeah.
one day, I'll never forget, I was like on this leadership retreat
Yeah.
and all my friends were like, you need to perform that. You need to read that piece. And I was like, what?
Really? At
And
the
they're like,
event?
yes. They're
Oh.
like, read that piece. So I read it. And when I read it, I cried. And everybody in the audience was just like,
Oh, boo. Oh, man. Yeah.
but it was very powerful. And it was like in that moment, I found my voice. See, I had a voice as far as like being a student leader, but it was because I was sharing a shared mission. But this was my voice because it was my story and it was my journey. And so there was something that happened to me in that moment. And from there, I was like, I need to start doing this. So that's when I started doing spoken word. Had like band for a while,
Oh,
everything.
that's
It got
cool.
really cool.
Yeah.
It was really cool. But that was when I first found my voice and I started fine tuning and developing it from that point on.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's really cool.
It is actually really cool when I think about it.
Oh my gosh! Like that's a whole. I didn't even know that. Like, how did you like? How long did you go do spoken word with like a band and go everywhere?
So about 3 years.
3 years? Oh,
About 3
snap.
years.
Yeah.
So when I stopped actually having live music with me, it started developing into what I would say is now podcasting, because then I was just speaking on tracks. You know, I would like download little MP3s from
Yeah.
YouTube. This is when they used to let you, and it
Okay,
would be
yeah,
free.
yeah.
Again, I'm dating myself.
No,
So so I would do that in my college dorm room, right? And I would sit there and I would write spoken word pieces to it. Then I would record it, and then I would upload it to SoundCloud, and then I would share that from that space. And so I kind of like had a break from that, and when I came back to it, it became a podcast. So I took those, like the things that I learned, those talents, and just like those technical, I guess you could say, understandings, and then put them together for a podcast several years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Lord's already working. He said, "Let me start," and then he
Seed
come
was
back.
planted, and I came back.
Really? Oh, that's really awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
I guess, how do you go about like taking what you've learned in your life and being able to like show other women like how to like have it make their voice heard and everything, and to like actually like believe into these in the affirmations that you're saying and you're speaking and giving them?
Woo, that, again, a deep question. But I appreciate it though, because the last part of your question really stuck with me. Getting them to believe the affirmation that it is that they're saying. So I'm gonna run with that part first, and
Hey,
you'll
go
probably
ahead.
have to remind me of the other
Oh,
half
you're
of
good,
it
yeah.
in a second. But I think that that's one of the biggest things that I'm passionate about, because there's a lot of fluff that's available. Like, affirmations are everywhere, and it's wonderful. But what's not wonderful about it is that you can become so used to seeing it or so used to saying it that it doesn't actually feed you. And it may not empower you if you haven't done the soul work.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? For it to actually like take root in you. And so in order for me to have a new belief, or a new idea about myself, I must deal with the ideas that need to go, which means I need to confront certain things. If it's, you know, going down and revisiting areas where I feel shameful, or where I feel like I failed, or where I feel rejected, confronting those parts of me. So that way, when I say I am loved, I am seen, I am heard, I am known, I actually can believe that. Because otherwise, I'm saying something, but it's not taking root in me because my brain and my heart already believe something else to be true.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I never even thought about it like that. I was just like,
I taught a class on this girl, so yeah.
Oh, snap. Yeah. But I say, I'm like, well, what do I need to explore? Like, trying to think about myself.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I just never really thought about that. Just getting so used to seeing that. You're just like, oh, like, you see it everywhere, like you said now, like on mirrors, with that, on Instagram, social media, everywhere. Wow, snap. And I guess you kind of like started like answering the other questions too about like how everyone finding their voice and everything and what that looks like.
Yes.
Oh man, that's
so
awesome.
yeah, so what it looks like really and truthfully is doing your work. It's going inwardly. I used to have this worksheet, and I feel like plenty of people probably have it now, but I was a forerunner back in the day. Yeah. So, but I also learned from great people too. So, identifying the lies that you believe about yourself. What is a lie and what is truth? What do I believe to be true about me? Why do I believe that to be true about me? What experience in my life said that that was truth? Or was this just one crappy experience that I have allowed to define my perspective of me in this area or my perspective of me overall? So I would say to women who are trying to come to a place where they feel empowered, do inventory. What do I believe to be true about me? What do I believe to be true about love, about finances, about relationships in regards to me and me only? It's cool when we talk about everybody else, but what do I really believe? Because what God showed me about me, even as I was doing like public speaking and to a degree life coaching at that time, you know the truth, but you don't yet fully believe the truth. And so there is something so different that happens when you believe something versus when you just know something.
Yeah.
So the transformation comes in knowing.
That's wild.
It is wild, and it can take a minute, you know. And I would just encourage them to not get distraught in the process, because healing is something that I feel like is perpetual. There are different levels and stages of healing. And so we go through them, you know, throughout life. In one season, you could feel amazing. And then in the next season, you can have an experience that pulls on a certain area that we still need a little bit of work in that. So don't get frustrated in that process. I started my process really at about like 24 years old. I'm 38. You know, it's been a while, but it's been worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh, wow. And that's really comforting to hear. The fact that healing, that perpetual perspective of healing, because it's so easy. Well, for me, at least when I view like of healing, people say, "Oh yeah, I've been healed from this." I think it's like, "Oh, you spent like a long time, like I don't know, a month, and then it was just one and done, and now you're never again." So,
yeah. Well, sometimes it can be that way, right?
Yeah.
But then other times there are some things that's like it's a process. Yeah.
Man, I love the dichotomy of it, at least. Oh, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love that. I also want to know, I guess, how did you go about spreading your vision to other people, whether they are people that work for you or other people that are in your community? Like, I know, like, this vision started from you and like spoken word and podcasting. How did you go ahead and share that and make that plain to other women or other people, really?
In regards to the magazine?
Oh yes, magazine or just like. Yes, magazine or anything else like to further your your business and everything.
I'll answer from the magazine perspective because I feel like it's the most relevant at this time. I would say what I did was I invited people that I knew had something to say, and I had known them, or I know them enough to know that what they would say would empower another woman because I have seen them overcome certain things. What I shared was, this is just what I'm trying to do. And to be honest, I don't even know that I articulated it in a way that was so great other than just hey girl, this is what I'm trying to do. You know,
Yeah.
do you want to be a part of it? Now, when I'm talking to someone that I don't know, you know, I think I get down more so to the heart and soul of what it is, which is to empower women to, you know, live from a space and place of being authentic, you know, and celebrating who God created them to be, in through the magazine, which is sharing women's stories who have overcome obstacles and odds, but also sharing from a perspective that we are not one dimensional. Like, it's not so for example, when I say that, I mean this. I can have affirmations, right? And that's one part of my life. But how do those affirmations come into every area of my life? How do they intertwine with relationships? How do they intertwine with business? How do they intertwine with my wellness? How do they intertwine even with fashion and beauty? Like, they all go hand in hand. I know I keep looking away,
No,
but,
you're good.
but it's
You're
like,
good. Yeah.
sometimes we'll take a thing and we'll leave it in its, okay, that's my pretty little compartment for my
Yeah.
affirmations. But it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
but the affirmation is supposed to take root in every area of your life. But if we don't know what that looks like, how can we do that? And so that was the purpose of the magazine, was to show what living in affirmation looks like in every area of your life.
Oh, wow. Okay, I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, let's say now I'm looking at think my affirmations in a whole new light and everything.
Girl, it's crazy,
Yeah,
right?
let's say,
It's a lot
yeah.
deeper than like what we think. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you think, okay, feel good, all right, then.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
oh wow, that's really cool. Have you been able to like, do you have any like stories of being able to actually, not actually, I know you have, but like seeing people like transformed by your like magazine and the stories that have been shared in there?
Okay, so the magazine is still really new, right? We're only on volume 2. We're
Yeah,
getting ready to be
yeah.
on volume 3 though. So if
Oh.
you want to be a part of it, or you would like to help us gain mass distribution, you know, please email me.
Yes.
We'll talk about that later. But
Okay, that.
I would say that some of the women who have written for the magazine, I'll go with that part first.
Yeah.
They have been changed because they have, most of them are first time magazine contributors. And so for them to be able to share their story, we have a woman who talked about the loss of her husband. That was the first time that she's actually written it out and shared that story publicly on a public platform outside of social media, you know, for other women to read.
Wow.
And that was, I don't know what that journey was like for her, right? But what she told me was that it is helping her. There are other women who have lost their mother, or women who are just going through like relational changes and need encouragement. And so they're reading these words. And I feel like, based off of the feedback that I'm getting, because, you know, I don't know everybody who reads it, but people love it. The women love it. And I am thankful for that. And the reason that I feel like it's so great is because it's not just me. It's not just my story. It's collective stories.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh wow, that's just it's like a beautiful painting. And I'm just imagining. Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
Oh, I love this. Okay, I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing too. This
Yeah,
is
of
awesome.
course. Girl, I love to share.
Yes. Ah, okay.
Storytelling is my thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was about to say yeah.
Right.
Say your life. Yeah. So it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yes.
Then. I do want to ask you. I guess going a little bit back. I guess. Ask you about your time in photography and what that was like, being able to first realize how to communicate visually. What that was like for you.
This is very interesting. This is so interesting because I never thought that I would be a photographer. I feel like photography chose me. I did not choose it. Like, it just happened. And the way that it happened was I had a life coaching business and I was doing, you know, events and I needed to get footage, but I was on a budget. Okay.
Yeah.
So I went and bought a camera. I had also had a really bad photo shoot for the start of my business. And I was like, surely I can do a better job, because whenever I pay for a service and it's not what I, you know, anticipated, in my mind, I'm always calculating, how can I do this for myself? Or do I need to hire someone else? So I was like, I'm gonna pick up a camera and I'm gonna learn how to do it. And that's what I did. So I would have my camera around my neck at the events that I was teaching at. and I would go and I would snap photos, and then I would show someone how to use the camera, and they would take pictures of me. That translated into women then asking me if I could take pictures for them, which then translated into this becoming a side hustle, which then translated into it basically taking over and becoming now my primary source of income. So I am a photojournalist by job definition. But the way that it happened was so backdoor. Like, I was just like,
it did choose you. Like,
it chose me. And I had no idea. But I have always had a love for media. I was always looking in magazines, looking at pictures, looking at television, and looking at how a thing was set up, how the person looked, where their hair was placed, the lighting, the tone of their skin, like everything, the details of people, not math.
Oh, yeah.
Don't talk to me about math.
No, you're good. You're good.
But the details of those, of visual aesthetics, I was just always like enamored by it. And then also by sound. So I would also study radio and how the DJs and VJs would say a thing, how they would introduce a song, how they would engage and interact with people. And I would record shows and I would re-listen to them every day as I studied. So it was like,
wow.
When I actually came to do photography, I guess you could say to some degree, there was an innate part of me that did understand what I was trying to create because I had studied it my whole life, just not from a technical perspective.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
It's weird. It's kind of crazy,
yeah,
right?
No, it's really cool. Because you didn't go to school for photography.
I did not.
What did you study at community college?
So when I first started going to school, I was studying communications and I was going to be a journalism major. I actually graduated with a degree in professional studies.
Oh, yeah?
So it
awesome.
was more like by the time I finished my degree, I had my business for 7 years. So I was like, let me find something that would help me withhold this business and to, empower my business more. But then back into journalism I go. Yeah. So
oh wow.
yes.
That's so cool. Wait, so just to make sure I get everything organized.
I know,
everything.
It's all spread out.
No,
yes.
You're good. So when did you said life coaching business? When did that start? And it's still going on, transformed into Live Affirmed, or how's that looking?
All right, so let me give you some form of a timeline here. So I started out doing freelance journalism in my early 20s.
Okay.
And then I went to school for journalism, decided I did not like it, took a break for a few years, went back to school. When I was in school, probably my late 20s, I decided to start my business. So then I have had my business now for 9.5 years. I graduated officially 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the life coaching started when I took a break from school. So that was when I started life coaching, and the photography started at that same time.
Okay.
Now it transformed into what we're doing now, but it stopped officially, I would say probably somewhere around like 2016, 2017. And then I was just kind of teaching e-courses and things like that, but it all evolved into where we are now.
Oh, wow. It's not everything, every point is for a reason. Like you said, every version
it's crazy. It's really crazy. And I hope I did the timeline in a way that's understandable.
Oh, yeah.
Because it makes sense to me, but it may not make sense to somebody else.
You're good. Yeah, I follow it. Hopefully everybody else follows. We'll see.
I'm sorry if you didn't.
Okay, how did that life coaching business first start? I guess what did you use kind of like I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I guess I know for entrepreneurs, there's always that innate feeling to go after different things. And you say you're a freelancer, that already has the go-getter spirit. So did you kind of use that in starting your business, life coaching business, or?
So I would love to say that my life coaching business was birthed from some happy place, but at that point in time, it just was not. I'm in a happy season of my life now, but it took a lot of work to get here, right? So I was actually in a state where I'm trying to find the words to say this without just putting all my business on the internet, right? But essentially, I was just in a very unhappy place. I had gotten fired from this job. And I had a mentor at the time, and she was like, what is it that you like so much about this job that you cannot recreate for yourself? Like, I'm going to need you to get it together, essentially. And I was like, oh, all right, then. And so she started talking to me like, what is it that you can offer to other people? Like, I want you to think about that. And so I was on this trip back home with family, and it was not a good trip. I was not in a good space. But I remember I was reading this book by Torrey Roberts called Purpose Awakening.
Purpose Awakening.
And there's this part where he says, you know, when he was trying to find his purpose, he prayed and he asked God to show him how he saw him and what it was that he wanted to do. I'm paraphrasing, okay? So I did the same thing. And I specifically heard God tell me, I want you to start sharing your story with other women. And so in that, I was being mentored. I was getting, you know, my own counseling. And I started very, I guess you could say, it was kind of, there was more fluff in the beginning because I was getting myself together. So it was like dream board events, you know, helping create a life vision, things like that. And then as I progressed and was in a better space, then we started with dealing with other people's lives and, you know, things that they were going through. And it was more so helping women to just understand the vision that they had for their lives and also creating affirmation boards. So I've been doing affirmation stuff for a very long time, since 2015.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy?
I said, Lord, he planted that early. He said, let's get the plan started.
But that's why I started it. So it was more so me just sharing my story. It was never, I'm not the kind of person who is like, let me tell you what to do. Because that really didn't work for me.
You're like, oops, next.
But I can tell you what not to do. You know, I can tell you what maybe you should think about, potentially, and present that perspective to you. I don't fully enjoy that line of work anymore, just because for me, because I care so deeply, it takes a lot out of me. What I do enjoy is putting what I know to be true for me and having other women do the same to create a collective of something that would be useful and beneficial to other women.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
I love it. Oh, wow. I'm trying to think.
Just take your time, girl.
I mean,
there's no.
I said no. You're good. I'm just excited. I'm just like, okay, what else do I? Yes.
Ask away.
Okay, let's see. I want to ask about like mentorship. I know you said your mentor was one that was like, hey, like, what can you create for yourself with this job that you learned? Like, what can you do? Like, why? I guess there's two questions. I guess. What any advice you have for like finding a mentor, and I guess I don't know if you're a mentor yourself, like how important is mentorship, like, and like I don't know, I was saying in this line of work, but it's a lot of lines of work, but I guess like in this life, I guess.
Yeah, I think that mentorship is so important. I have had some of the best mentors, and they were literally a godsend to me because I was coming from a space and a place where there were seasons, especially the earlier seasons of my life, I was not that close to my mom. And that's not really her fault. I just had a lot of stuff I needed to deal with. And so because I didn't have that super close relationship with her, I needed mentorship from older women who were doing what I wanted to do, who were in a space and place where they had worked through the majority of their issues and could kind of call a spade and, you know, help me get it together. It was so helpful and beneficial to me that I do not know where I would be had I not had mentors. And I had mentors in various stages of my life. So I had some in college. I had some when I started my business. And then I had and have one even now who, her, out of all of them, radically transformed my life because there were some certain things that she was able to give to me that were so essential to me being the kind of woman that I wanted to be, that yeah, I just don't know where I would be had I not gotten it. And I think that there are some, you have to be mindful of who you choose, right?
Yeah.
I would say choose from who you want to be. Think ahead. Don't even think about now. When you look at who you want to be down the road, pick someone like that. Because sometimes we can pick people who are just one step ahead of us. You know,
Snap, yeah.
the women that have mentored me were multiple steps ahead of me. And I'm not knocking whoever is just one step ahead of us, because that's a process,
Yeah.
you know, and people who are only one step ahead of us are helpful because they're still ahead of us.
Yeah.
But I would say really think about who you want to be down the line and pick a mentor based off of that. For me, because of the kind of things I had been through, I really needed somebody who had a whole lot of life under their belt, because I came with some serious stuff.
Okay,
You know what I mean? I'm like, you can't be fluffy with me,
Yeah.
because it's not going to do anything for me. Now, when I sit down, I chuckle, I laugh, but in all actuality, it's like there was such an edge at certain stages of my life that I had, because it was real. Like my life was real. My problems were very real.
Yeah.
And it's like, I really needed someone with proper insight and perspective to help me get, to a space that I needed to be in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I guess. And were you ever in a space? You felt that space of knowing that, I need a mentor, or did it just kind of like happen to you when you first got your first mentor?
Yeah, what was weird is that they were always kind of presented to me. Like I would be somewhere and I would see someone doing something and I'd be like, they would just stand out and I'd be like, I need that. I need that thing. Whatever it is that this person has, I need to know about it. I need to study it. I need to pick their brain and I need to, develop it.
Yeah.
And so I think because I was so self-aware of where I needed to grow, right? Because we know our shortcomings. If we know anything,
we know, yeah.
Hopefully,
Unfortunately.
hopefully, we know our shortcomings. And so I was very cognizant of my shortcomings. And so I would see women who would excel in those areas and I would say, okay, I would look at that. But also I would look at like how their life was. Like, were they happy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Were they a decent, nice person? Like,
Yeah.
Yes, like you could excel in this, but like, you could also be really hateful and rude.
Literally, yes. Unfortunately, but yes, that's true.
Right. And that's that's actually very common, so I would kind of study them for a while and then eventually, I would address it. And thankfully, they all said yes.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. You just like, hey, I've been...
I would just say, hey, I was just really wondering if, you would be able to help me or if you would be able to talk to me, about XYZ. I have this going on and I was just really looking like for some insight. Or if you would be interested, in helping me with this. And so, it's like, I just think back to those moments and they literally were just presented to me. But I would say if they're not presented to you, which I don't know if that actually really happens or not, because I only know my experience.
Yeah.
But I do know that you can find mentors. Like there are
Yeah.
websites and stuff where you can look at the skills that someone has and decide based off of your shortcomings if they would be a good fit.
That's true. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna pray for the presentation. That sounds a lot better.
Yeah,
I like that part. Yeah.
My favorite line is God send help.
Yes.
Help.
Oh my goodness. Please.
H-E-L-P.
Please.
Send
Yes.
it now.
Literally, because it's not good down here.
Yes.
It's not good.
Yeah. We need you.
Yes. But are you a mentor now?
I not knowingly.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I do think that, to some degrees, I have noticed that there are, women who look up to me that are younger or maybe slightly younger. And I appreciate that. I am not in a space to mentor at this perfect time, at this time, only because I am so busy.
Yes, okay.
So maybe it's more like a timing issue.
Okay.
But it's not something that I'm not open to.
Yeah, for sure.
I just feel like right now we are running and we are running fast.
Yeah.
So maybe when my life slows down a little bit, because I'm also cognizant of the fact that when you have someone looking to you for something And if they are vulnerable enough to share that space for, or open that space for you, and they don't get anything, or they are feeling disappointed or rejected, that can also adversely affect them. And I would rather just say in this time I'm too busy for that, but come another season. Yeah.
That's wise.
Yeah,
That's wise.
yeah.
Yes.
Because I think we can all attest to the fact that if we've had an expectation of someone, and that disappointment that comes, when it's like, man, I really looked up to you, like how people say, like, never meet like your heroes or whatever. Like, it's like, I don't want to be that.
Yeah, literally. Oh my goodness, it's that story.
Yeah, it's, man. I touched my mic. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. Don't worry about it. So I want to ask you, who has inspired you the most? Like whether it's your mentors, your family, or who somebody in your life.
Yeah, this is difficult for me to answer just because I feel like I have known so many amazing women. But my mother and my grandmother definitely are the first two that I think of, along with my mentor, who is my pastor, or she was my pastor for an extended period of time. But my grandma was so independent and she was so creative. So she made her own clothing. She made her jewelry. She played the piano and the organ up until she was like 92.
Oh, snap.
Yes,
Yeah.
she drove herself. She died in her home. Like, that was her goal.
Yeah.
Like, she was like, I'm not going anywhere outside of my home. If I'm going to go in my home. And she did.
Wow.
She loved her home. She had a garden
when
I was growing up. So she planted, her own fruits and vegetables.
Trying to be like that.
Yeah, I mean, grandma was the business. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And when I think about her, I just think about a woman who just persevered. I think about my mom. My mom just was a woman who persevered, and I always feel like a lot of the times the only reason why, it's not that we're so great as a generation. It's because we were able to like stand on the shoulders of a lot of people who did the work, who got us to a place where there were public platforms for us to share our voices and stuff. But when I think about, when my parents were growing up, that stuff wasn't, available to them. There were certain areas that were carved out, and this was just kind of like how you did life. When I think about my pastor, I just think about a woman who's so wise. Her wisdom like really exceeds her years. And so to be able to share with me wisdom, not to share, gossip, not to tear me down in any way, but to always build me with wisdom. And so I believe that my wisdom is beyond my years because of the kind of women that I have encountered in my life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It truly is a wonderful thing. And I know that it's not so common,
Unfortunately.
Right, unfortunately. But I'm thankful and I'm grateful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I guess if you like had a chance to pass that wisdom down to maybe a younger version of yourself, maybe like before, I don't know, whether it's life coaching, before photography, or like whatever stage in your life you felt like you needed it the most, what would you say to yourself?
So many things.
Yeah.
So many. I think the most important would be to, man, that's good. To really pause. Know God. Really dig into that relationship as deep as I can, because there's a time period. I think the foundational relationship between us and God is so critical because it's so overlooked. It's like, okay, got a little bit of God this morning before I went to work. Now I'm about to just like go and whatever. But it's like, it is the relationship that feeds everything. It feeds it is my identity. My identity is found in that. And so if I don't spend enough time in that, I don't even know me fully. So I would say to myself, pause. Get to really know God. Know yourself in God. Trust who you are and have confidence in who you are and show up only as that. Because I've been like 100 different people, but, and I don't say that like in like a crazy way. I just say that like, I'm a creative person. So like, I like different hairstyles and different clothing. And so I had different interests at different times, which is great. But some of those things came from a place because I was trying to find something.
Yeah.
And so it was only in relationship with God that I truly felt like I am beginning to understand who I really am, to know who I really am, and to really walk in who I am with the kind of confidence that's needed in a world that always tells you what you should be, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think when you have that, that is key for everything. It's key for relationship. It's key for success in your passion and in your purpose. It's key for success as just having a fulfilled and happy life. You know, that to me, that would be the main thing I would say. And also, who cares what other people have to say about who you are? You know, one thing is when you are living a life that is inauthentic to who you really are, people are going to talk about that too. So you might as well be happy. You might as well be rooted, and you might as well be authentic and shine in that way. So that way, whatever you do, you know that you have given yourself from a place and space that is so true to who you are that whatever comes from that, some bad, you know, there are things that there's might be unwanted attention or unwanted interactions, but the good that comes from being fulfilled, from doing what you know that is so true to who you are.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not sure. Now you know. Now you know when it comes back at you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I really love that. I really love that. And I needed to hear that. I know for myself, too.
Listen, we all need to hear it, you know, because I think it's so hard in this day and age when you are looking at so many different realities and so many different stories, and we start comparing our story to someone else's story. But that life or that, you know, success is inauthentic to who you are. So what difference does it make? Like, be happy for that person and find your own instead of saying, I want that. What if that ruins you or destroys you? Because it's so inauthentic to who you are and who you were created to be that it could literally take you out. You know what I mean?
Think about that.
Like, maybe you don't have the disciplines for that, or maybe maybe life in the public eye is maybe that person can handle it, but maybe for you, it would be too much. You know, like I think everyone's life is built to the capacity that they have. And so to admire someone else's life from the perspective of, I must have that, instead of I must have my version of that, is dangerous.
Man, okay.
But I only say it from a place of, you know, having done that and understanding how easily and quickly your life can be derailed because of it, you know, and the time that it takes to pull yourself back, get it together, find out who you are, you know, and then you're doing ultimately what we could have been doing from the beginning. So, yeah.
Man,
girl, I know it's a lot, and when I
I'm just like, hold on, let me remember get my notebook out. I should run it back. But
it's hard.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a journey for sure.
It is.
But I know a lot of people. I know if I need to hear it, I know a lot of other people need to hear that too. And so hopefully the journey starts today, and then I don't know, we can move forward and find out what success looks like for us as individuals.
Yes, I think. Go ahead, say what you're gonna say.
Oh no, I just I was just thinking about how like people. I guess never mind. I don't want to say anything else. But
say it. I don't want to be the only one talking.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
That's weird to me.
You're good. I think I just read something like earlier. I don't know where I read it and everything, but everyone tries to like pass on and stuff like that. Their specific journey and their like, it's like, I forgot what the wording was that they specifically used where I found it at. But everyone tries to pass on their specific journey and their password to like something that's constantly changing. So it's like, oh, here's what I did. Almost like, oh, here's my lottery ticket and everything. So you can try to win lottery. Like, it's never going to be the same again. It's like, you have to find what your path looks like. And I think it takes a lot, like you said, a lot of mental, emotional work. And a lot of that, you know, even with the affirmations that you're doing, Live Affirmed.
Yeah.
We need that because they're like being able to like, and it even like starts with that, being able to like take something that you've read and be able to apply it to each and every part of your life. Like, take something with, you know, a grain of salt, but figure out, like, how do you integrate that into your life in your own way and by, like, based off of your passions and your goals and how you live your life and how you think, too. I really think about that, but
Yeah.
I love it. I'm eating this up. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is good.
I mean, you said some really good stuff there, right? Because you said that people share something that worked for them, and it could possibly only be something that just worked for them. I believe, that there's so much truth in that. And I would say, like, to piggyback off of what you're saying, there are key principles, right, that can be applied, especially if you go to like biblical truths. There are key principles to success, to health, to wellness, however, everything will not benefit everyone in the same way because everyone has different needs, like you just said.
Yeah.
So there is so much in that's literally like, you could write a book, you could have a movie, you could do a series, because we're always, I don't know, maybe unknowingly in a state of competition with people that we don't even know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, you're right. That advice, that thing that is working for them may not be your key. So in order to know what is your key, it's to get into relationship with God and allow him to reveal that to you. And you can still take, things that do work from other people, but also know what works for you. Figure out what that is. Hi, everyone. I am Erin, Elise, Enyinda, and this is the Apprentice podcast.